Welcome to the economics class. Today we are going to see the evolution of economics, the economics of individuals, firms and the markets. These are the 3 or 4 aspects which we would be covering today. Let us begin with the evolution of economics. In all the subjects we have the philosophy, like Newton sitting under the tree and an apple falling on his head, and then the gravitational force is discovered. Then it turns into a formula, and then an application is developed around it. If we see all these 3 aspects, the first one is the philosophy, the second one is the formula, and third one is the application. Similarly, in economics also we have philosophy, formula and the application. So we would first start with the philosophy. That's what we would cover under the evolution of economics, and then later we will go into the formulae which are used in this subject, and then let us look at the applications in each of these areas. The history of the economic thought begins in the pre-classical period, which is before 1776. Till 1776 it is called as the pre-classical period. In 1776, it was an agrarian economy throughout the world. They were mostly agriculturists, and they believed in agriculture, and they thought that agriculture was their only livelihood. And the next school of thought in economics is the one they said it's not just cultivating something all the time, it is also doing some kind of trading, and trading adds more wealth to the countries rather than just doing the agriculture. Even if you don't produce some of the products, that you can go and conquer the other country or buy it from the other countries or economies, and then your economy can still survive and grow. These were the 2 schools of thought in the pre-classical period of economics. So those who believed in agriculture are called physiocrats, and those who believed in trade are called mercantilists. Now let us go into these 2 groups of people. In the agrarian are the peace lovers, and the mercantilists or businessmen who were traders, who went across seas and then who did trade, procured various things, and then they came back and added wealth. There was a cycle during these centuries between the physiocrats and mercantilists. Even now there is some kind of cyclical changes in the governments and the policies of the governments. Sometimes it is Democrats, sometimes it is Republicans, and sometimes it is the Labour, and sometimes it is the Tory. In many countries sometimes it is the socialists, or it is those who support the market forces. So basically the history of economic thought is the kind of cyclical change in the orientation of the governments towards the economy. So after this pre-classical period, then the classical period came, which believed in the perfect market economy. Some of the classical thinkers, J.B. Say, Jeremy Bentham, and all those people are classical economists who gave very profound laws of economics. Then came the socialism, and in between there were some marginal economists who were propounding their marginal theories of economics. Later there were some neoclassical economists who were also giving a different perspective to the economic policies to be followed in economies. Then came the Keynesians, who believed in more intervention, and the monetarists, of course, are those who believed in lesser intervention. So in those days it was mercantilists who believed in proactive policies, and physiocrats who were more passive and agrarian, peace-loving, and kind of policies which they had. So this is what we would be seeing over again. So the physiocrats are a group of economists who believed that the wealth of the nations were derived solely from the value of the land and agriculture or the land development. This was propounded by a famous economist called Francis Quesnay in 1759. He laid the foundation for the physiocrats and the economic theories. Then came the mercantilism, which is the doctrine that the government and its control of the foreign trade is of paramount importance for ensuring the military security of a country. So these are the two groups of people whom I mentioned earlier. Then let us briefly look at the different principles introduced by the classical economists. One of the classical economists is Adam Smith. Adam Smith introduced something called the division of labor. The division of labor, he brought in this example of film manufacturing. If one person manufactures film throughout the day, he would be hardly be able to manufacture 10 films a day, because he had to buy the wire from the market, cut it, sharpen one edge and blunt the other edge, and fix a head on top of it, and it has to be packed, and then it has to be taken to the market. Then hardly 10 films could be produced in a day. But whereas if there are the whole work process is divided into many compartments, then the productivity can improve much more than what we can think or imagine. This was the idea of Adam Smith, and it is called the division of labor. Then came David Ricardo. David Ricardo gave us the theory of rent. David Ricardo, in his theory of rent, says that rent is that portion of the produce given to that landlord for the original and the indestructible powers of the soil. So these are some profound theories which were given by the classical economists. Malthusian theory of population says, Thomas Malthus introduced this Malthusian theory, which says that if the population grows at an arithmetic progression, the food requirements would grow at a geometric progression, and the whole need for food would double itself in 25 years, was the estimation of Malthus, which is absolutely true, which we can see these days. J.B. Say came up with the law which says that supply creates its own demand. And J.S. Mill is also one of the welfare economists who also contributed very significantly towards the ethics in the business operations. So this is Adam Smith, and his book was called as The Wealth of Nations, which was published in 1776, as I mentioned about the filmmaking example for explaining the division of labor. Ricardo theory of rent says that it is the portion of the produce of the year paid to the landlord for the original and the indestructible powers of the soil. the Thomas Malthus, as I mentioned, earlier, had very clearly explained that when the food output increases at an arithmetic progression, the population would be increasing at a geometric progression. The marginal and the utilitarians are J.B. Say and J.S. Mill, and J.B. Say said that supply would create its own demand. And now let us come to the theory of socialism by Karl Marx. You all might be aware that there was a period in which there were a group of countries which were market oriented and the other were labor oriented. These labor oriented group of people were inspired by two great leaders. One was Karl Marx and the other was Stalin, who built up this socialist concept of government in the European region. Earlier, there have been French socialists, Octonian socialists, and there were a few other types of socialists who lived there and who believed that your children and my children can live together and we can have our children kind of concept, and those were extreme levels of socialism which prevailed in the early stages of socialism. But the essence of the Karl Marx theory and the socialist philosophy for the value of surplus value of which is created in the production can be explained with a very small illustration. If you go to the street where most of the jewelers live, jewelry shops are there, and if you walk in the street and if you pick up some sand from the dust from the street and put it into your pocket, and everyone will laugh at you as an insane person. But if we walk into one of those shops which are there, jewelry shops, and then pick up some of those jewels which are kept there in the showcases and put it into our pocket, we would be called as a thief. Sometimes we would be punished very severely. So what is the difference between these two things which were grabbed and stuffed into my pocket? The first one was the sand and second one was the gold. Both are dug out from the earth. It's ironic. So the difference between the dust and the gold is the value of the human labor, which is quite visible. The value addition in the gold is nothing but the sweat and blood of the labor. This is the essence of the Marxian theory. It was first introduced in the Communist Party manifesto by Karl Marx, and later he wrote four volumes of book called Das Kapital, which was originally a German book, and later on it was translated by his friend Friedrich Engels. So the essence of this socialism introduced by Karl Marx is that the surplus value or value addition in any value chain can be attributed only to the labor and nothing else. Now let us move on to the other types of thoughts. In the 1930s, there was a Great Depression in the United States, and there are many people who became unemployed. At that time, the US government invited a British economist called Lord Maynard Keynes, or John Maynard Keynes. He was invited to provide solutions, and he provided two important contributions to the economics. One is the aggregate demand theory, which also explains the pump priming, and the liquidity preference theory, or the theory of interest. Okay, now let me very briefly give an explanation about the aggregate demand or the pump priming theory, or what was the solution that was given by John Maynard Keynes to the problems of United States in the 1930s, and how he advised the government to solve the problem there was he gave one single piece of advice: pump priming. Pump priming, as you might be aware, is like a bore pump, which requires some water to be poured inside before it is pumped. If you just go and pump any hand pump which is there on the street, you will not get water unless somebody has been continuously pumping it all the time. If you are starting it up fresh after a break, you need to pour some water for it to give you adequate water. So this is the example what John Maynard Keynes gave for the American economy in the 1930s. He said you have to invest. If there is no autonomous investment which is taking place by the market, then there should be an induced investment. That's what he was trying to explain. The induced investment can come from the government. The government can intervene in the market, create employment, generate employment, and produce a lot of income in the economy by investments. So the government, instead of printing notes and putting it into the hands of the people in the name of doles, which would make people lazy, obviously can start building roads, buildings, bridges, and power stations, and so many other things which would generate more and more employment, productive employment in the country. So now, this was the suggestion of pump priming given by John Maynard Keynes, and it was very well successful, and perhaps that's why United States is carrying out this infrastructure building programs throughout the world, be it Vietnam or Afghanistan or any other place. And it goes on, Iraq and so many other places. This infrastructure building extends beyond boundaries across the world, so that it generates employment. It does generate employment. Or you can even consider the space programs, Mars missions of United States, NASA, and other organizations. They spend enormous amount of money in research, scientific research. And this goes for nation building. Well, the next group of people are the monetarists. The monetarists believe that it is not by the supply of money or by printing of notes or by public expenditure the economy can be controlled. These people believe that it can be controlled by the interest rates and by the central bank. And that is the whole attention of the monetarist is towards the interest rates, whereas the whole attention of the Keynesians and the socialists were towards the public expenditure or the fiscal economy. So the evolution of economics can be classified into three stages, according to me. The first stage consisting of people like the physiocrats and the mercantilists, and the second stage consisting of people socialists versus capitalists, the Cold War era, where there was a war between these two groups of people, market-oriented and non-market-oriented people. Later, we refined the whole conflict got much more refined between the Keynesian and versus the monetarists. So the economics is a study of one's efforts and satisfaction. This is one of the definitions of economics given by John Robinson. So the main branches of economics are the microeconomics, consisting of individuals, families, firms, markets. And the macroeconomics consists of covering the areas of aggregate income, savings, investment, exports, imports, etc. And the monetary economics covering the aspects of money, currency, coins, interest, foreign exchange, your central bank of the country, and the security exchange board of the respective country, the insurance regulator, mutual fund regulator. All those regulators are covered under the monetary economics. The public economics deals with the revenue and the expenditure of the government. The revenue can be classified into two. One is the direct and the indirect revenues. The direct revenue is could be tax revenue or non-tax revenue. The tax revenue, direct taxes are usually the income tax kind of things which you pay directly, and the indirect taxes are the sales taxes and the taxes which are levied on the commodities. They are called indirect taxes. While I mentioned about the different revenue streams, I do have to mention about the three levels of taxation which are prevalent in India. One is the central level, state level, and the local body level. Not only the taxes, the expenditure also is there at the three levels. At the national level, there is a government, and at the state level, there is a government, and at the local body level, the corporation level or municipal level, there is a government. There are elected representatives who run these government at different levels. We would, whenever we speak about public economics in the Indian context, it would be either in the context of national or at the state or at the local level. So we need to be aware sometimes when some of the industries do represent issues, they are not aware to whom to represent. Some of the sales tax issues are sometimes represented to the central government. Yes, there is a seventh schedule in the Indian Constitution which classifies which tax can be levied by either of these governments. There is also a concurrent list. There are some items which can be taxed by both the governments. Now, let us move ahead into the individuals, individual economics of individuals. Let us see some of the things which are important here. So we would be covering the law of demand, elasticity of demand, forecasting demand, and the law of diminishing marginal utility, and the indifference curves are some of the things that we would be covering over the next few minutes. See, there is a beautiful state in India called Kashmir, and there is also another state in India called Himachal Pradesh. Simla is there. Simla is well known for apples, just like Washington is known for apples. Australia Australia and New Zealand has a lot of apples. So Simla has a lot of apples. So when we go to the market in other parts of India, we ask the price of apples, and if they say it is maybe $5 a kg, we sometimes do think to buy whether I should spend $5 on a kg of apple. But when I go to Simla, it is sometimes $5 a basket of apples, so sometimes or a box of apple. So we buy boxes and boxes of apples, and then we bring it here, and then we distribute it. We tend to buy more when the price is less. I tend to buy more in Simla when the price is less. Rather, I tend to buy less when the price is more. This is called law of demand. It happens in everybody's home. It happens in your home when your mom goes to the market and when she is trying to buy some vegetables, if the price of vegetable is too high, then she will think that, okay, let me buy a little lesser potatoes today and let me come back to the market and buy more potatoes when it is little more cheaper there tomorrow or day after. So this is exactly is called as the law of demand. So the law of demand is states that when other things remaining constant or ceteris paribus is when the price falls, the demand expands. So some of the classical features of this law of demand is that the law of demand assumes that all the other things remain constant. All the other things like my taste, my preferences, all the other things doesn't matter. The only thing which matters here is the price. It is an assumption. That is the ceteris paribus assumption. And also it also assumes that there is a law of diminishing marginal utility which is operating here. I will explain that a little later. Then it also assumes that the slope of the demand curve is negative, that it is slopes from left to right, downward, and there is a linear relationship between in the law of demand. There are some exceptions to the laws of demand. First one is the additive goods, like the smoking, drinking, such kind of additive goods. Even though the price is high, people do go and buy it and then consume those products. And similarly, there are some luxurious good products like luxury cars, which are a symbol of status rather than a point of utility. They are very expensive. They are demanded more despite it being very expensive. And a lot of kids, we all aspire, men aspire to own better cars, and maybe perhaps nowadays even women aspire to get better cars, though the price is higher. Now, there is another concept in the law of demand, which is called as the elasticity of demand. Let me tell you an example of we all buy salt at home. Whatever may be the price of salt, in my home there are 4 adults and 2 children, so 6 people are there. So we need 1 kg of salt minimum a month, maybe 1.5 kgs. Whatever may be the price, this 1.5 kgs will be consumed. It is very difficult to consume some of the food without salt, especially the good proteins, protein-related food. You need good salt and seasoning to be edible. So this is the first left graph, which indicates that whatever may be the price of whatever may be the price of salt, a fixed amount of quantity is required for my house, 1.5 kgs. This is inelastic demand. This is called inelastic, perfectly inelastic demand. There are certain products with a small change in price, nothing will be demanded. A typical example is the price of Microsoft shares in the New York Stock Exchange. Any change in the sudden change, there will be panic selling or panic buying in the market. Any change in price would lead to complete change in the proposition of goods sold in the market. This is perfectly elastic demand. So stock markets are an example of a perfectly elastic demanded products. Even there, some stocks could be an exception, but this was one of the best examples which I could find. Now let me just explain you the way in which demand could be forecasted. To understand demand forecasting, we need to understand the equation of the straight line. When we are thorough with the equation of the straight line, then we would be able to forecast the demand for any product very accurately. With the greatest accuracy, we would be able to forecast. Here, the quantity is the function of price. So, is the equation of the straight line. That is, Q is equal to F of P. Quantity is the function of price. So, quantity has to be on the dependent variable, and the price has to be the explanatory variable for forecasting demand. You can add more variables as you go on when you start doing this forecasting using sophisticated packages like SAS, SPSS, and other packages. You can Shazam. There are so many other packages which you can use to compute this demand for any product. You can even do it in Excel. Microsoft Excel, you can do it, but you need to understand the fundamental how this operates. The two equations I have written on top of the table towards this in this slide. These two equations, how they are derived, I would explain, and then it would make it much more clear how to compute the. We all know the equation of the straight line y is equal to a plus bx. A plus bx. So in the first equation, what I have done is I have added a sigma to the whole equation. So on left hand side the sigma has been included, in the right hand side the sigma has been included in the second variable. In the first variable on the right hand side, instead of sigma, I have included n, number of occurrences. So it is just the equation of the straight line with the sigma on both sides, and instead of sigma, n in the right side is the first of the normal equation. And the second equation is you multiply the whole equation with the explanatory variable. The explanatory variable in this first equation is x. So we multiply the whole equation y equal to a plus bx into or the first equation with x. If we multiply it, it becomes sigma xy equal to, here we remove the n, instead we give a sigma x because the n is taken care there, plus b sigma x square. These are the two equations which we have to remember to compute demand by hand, by pen, paper and pencil. If you want to estimate, this is the formula you need to remember. It's very easy to remember, you need to remember. And this is just an illustration which. So what will we estimate? We will estimate the A is the constant, and B is the slope of the demand curve. These two things you can estimate even if the series is long. If there is a large number of observations also, you can estimate the demand, you can forecast the demand to a greater accuracy if you know these formula. This is one of the standard methodologies which we use for forecasting demand. Okay, now let me just start upon this, touch upon this law of diminishing marginal utility. The utility is something like a satisfaction, measure of satisfaction in economics. What do we measure? There are two graphs which you will have to remember here is that when we consume a product, whether it is ice cream which we like the most or any other product, as we keep consuming it more and more, the use of that product starts diminishing. At some point of time, we hit the saturation and say, "Oh God, thank you. I don't want any more ice creams. Let me stop here." Is one of the situations which we reach in this law of diminishing marginal utility. So the first graph on top represents the total utility. It keeps increasing and at some point of time it starts diminishing. So the second graph represents the additional utility or the marginal utility you derive from every additional consumption unit of ice cream which is consumed. It keeps going down. At some point of time it hits zero and then goes negative. This is called the law of diminishing marginal utility. Law of demand assumes that for all the products, the law of diminishing marginal utility is in operation. This is one of the fundamental assumptions of the law of demand. Let us now go to another utility theory. The previous theory was a cardinal utility theory, and this one is an ordinal utility theory. They say that you cannot just have one explanatory variable and then price alone as one factor and then project the estimate the demand. Demand is relative and it is not an absolutely measurable quantity, and therefore it can be only a relative combination of two products, not one product. It could be coffee and biscuits, and with the amount of money which I have, what is the complete amount of, if I have $100 with me, and if I consume a whole lot of coffees, so how many coffees can I buy in a place? Or if I can buy biscuits, how many packets of biscuits can I buy? And a person breaks even at a place or identifies a place of optimal solution, and then the best ordered fare is consumed. Maybe a cup of coffee and 2 biscuits is consumed in some places. So this is this theory was introduced by J.R. Hicks. Hicks and Allen introduced the indifference curve theory for the ordinal utility theory. Now, this one more concept I would like to kind of explain it before I move on to the firms. So we have seen about the law of demand, the marginal utility, the total utility, and the methods of measuring utility. There are 2 methods. One is the absolute method, which is comes under the cardinal utility theory or law of diminishing marginal utility. Second one is the ordinal utility theory, which is explained through the indifference curves. Now, before we go into the production or the economics of the firms or of the producers, so far what all we saw is all about the individuals who live at home, our relatives, our parents, into our concerns about our own individual selves. And now we are moving to talk about the firm. So at this juncture, I think it is very appropriate for me to explain this concept called circular flow. There are 2 entities, 2 major entities in any economy. One is the firms and the other one is the households. And the firms provide the factors of production like land, labor, capital, and organization to the firms. We provide labor, we sell our land for factories to be built. So these are things which are given by the households to the firms. In turn, the households get wages, rent, dividends, and all those things. They get it back. And similarly, consumers also, the households who are living in households, they go to the firms and they buy various products, cars, and so many other things. They buy it from the firms, and they in turn get paid for those goods and services. This is called a circular flow in an economy. And having said that, now let us start looking at the suppliers side of this whole story. I used to live in a village in India where there used to be onion farmers. So when I went to one of my classmates' residents. They used to have onion tied up inside the roof of their house. It was a hut, and they lived in the farmer. He came from a farmer household, and he lived in the hut. And he used to have onions hanging in the roof of his house. So suddenly, if he wants to have a beer or a drink, he used to bring down some of these onions which are hanging inside the hut, take it to the grocer, give it to the grocer in the street, in the village main street, sell it to him, collect some money, and then go to the bar and have a drink. This is not only true for onion farmers, this is also true for coconut farmers. Another one friend of mine had a coconut grove, and so whenever he wanted to have a drink, he used to have a couple of coconuts brought down, and he sells it, and then he goes for a drink. So the farmers sell the products to get money for their essential needs. But if you look at it, both my friends used to grab some of the products what their fathers have cultivated and stored in their houses for their immediate requirements, but whereas their parents wouldn't do the same thing. They wouldn't do the same thing. They wouldn't carry a little and go to the market. But what they would do is they will find out what is the best price in the market which is available. Today they will call up the market before they ship the onions to the market or the coconuts to the market. They would call up and ask what is the price of the coconut in the market, or what is the price of onions in the market, and then they would ship it to the market. And this is called law of supply. And if a person supplies, a producer supplies into the market based on the price, and he would supply a higher, more amount of products when the price is high, and he would never supply more amount of product when the price is low. This is called the law of supply. This is completely the opposite of what we would do when we go to the market. We would buy more when the price is less. So the producer would bring very less when the price is low, unless it is a perishable commodity. The fruits, nothing can be done. You can't store it for a long. You might have some refrigeration in some of the storages, but you can't store it forever. So it can be preserved for some time. So in some case of these perishable commodities, it is there is a shelf life. So this is called law of supply. Just like the law of demand has law of marginal utility, the law of supply has law of marginal productivity theory. See here, in the picture you find that when there are two guys more than required number of people, they just lie down and sleep, and the productivity is less. So if you keep increasing labor, at some point of time, they will start sleeping like this, as you see it in the picture. This is the total productivity. The total productivity goes down after a point of time. At some point of time, you can keep increasing. The productivity will increase. The number of laborers, if you increase, the productivity output will increase. And after some point of time, it will completely come to a standstill. This is called the law of marginal productivity. The lower graph explains the cumulative productivity. The top graph explains the cumulative productivity, and the lower graph explains the marginal productivity. It keeps diminishing. And here also, instead of indifference curve, we have a combination of factors of production, labor, and capital. This is explained very well in the isoquants. It's an ordinal theory. It is applied to factors of production. We saw that there are four factors of production: land, labor, and capital, and organization. And here it considers two factors of production: labor and capital. And the combinations of different factors of production are available. A larger firm has a larger ratio of labor and capital, and smaller firm has a smaller ratio of labor and capital. Now let me briefly mention the different types of production function. In some, most of the production function consider two factors of production and not all the four factors of production function. The two most important factors of production which have to be remembered are the corporate gross production function and the CES production function. Both consider labor and capital only, and both of them are assume substitutability of the factors of production. So, whereas in the CES production function, CES stands for constant elasticity substitution, and in the corporate loss production function also you find labor and capital. Both the production function has some coefficient for the substitutability. And so far, the concepts that we have covered are the evolution, physiocrats versus mercantilists, the capitalist, socialist versus capitalist, institutionalism versus free market, and the Keynesian versus monetarist. And we also saw the branches of economics, circular flow, the law of demand, elasticity, about the consumers, demand forecasting model, the normal equations, and the law of diminishing marginal utility, indifference curve, and relating to producers we saw the law of supply, law of marginal product, and the isoquants. These are the things that we have covered so far. Thank you.